here. It's the one and only Thom Hartmann, host of the Thom Hartmann Show on this very channel from, is it noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. New York Times bestselling author. And of course, his Substack is great. You should sign up for it. The Hartmann Report at hartmannreport.com. And earlier today, I was on Tom's show, and now it's a home and home series. It's good to have you here, Tom. Welcome to the
Thanks for inviting me, Dean.
Nice to see you, my friend.
Great to see you.
It's nice being on your show. I always enjoy going on your show and chatting with you and being a guest on your show.
Yeah, you always do a great job. People love it.
It's very kind. So let's talk about your article that Trump's goal is to end elections. And that comes out of Governor Pritzker's speech from Monday night, which I mentioned I played on my show last night. We talked about it on your show today. Tell people a little bit about how likely you think that is, and how does he use the military to prevent the elections?
Right. Well, there's a couple of things. Number one, the military is not trained in policing. This has nothing to do with law and order or crime. I mean, and the proof of that is that right now he's got the National Guard picking up trash in DC. It's just like, this is not what you call out the military for. But the one thing the military is good at is crowd control, which leads us to the second point, which is what is the number one thing in countries around the world that are suffering from a transition or experiencing a transition from democracy to autocracy? What is the number one thing that gets millions of people out in the streets? Stealing an election or denying an election or rigging an election, electoral shenanigans. And so my take on this is that what Trump is doing is he's trying to get us used to this. He's trying to get past all the court challenges. He wants there to be a military presence available to him when the 2026 elections happen in a year and just a couple of months. And this November will probably be a lot of fine tuning around that. And, for people who are skeptical about that, I think it's important to note that, Mike Flynn, when he was Trump's national security advisor, told him, go out and seize the voting machines in the blue cities so that those votes don't have to be counted. And, if you can, or presumably so those votes don't have to be counted, if you could knock out Los Angeles and San Francisco, you can turn California red. If you can knock out Chicago, you can turn Illinois red. If you can knock out Dallas and Houston, you'll never have another challenge in Texas. But in particular, in the blue states, you can, you knock out Atlanta, there's not a single Republican statewide who's going to lose in Georgia, including, whoever's running against John Ossoff. So it looks to me like he's preparing to do what he tried to do, what he discussed doing, what his advisors wanted him to do in 2020, including when he asked Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, when they went out and did their upside down Bible photo op in Lafayette Square, and there were protesters there, and he demanded that Mark Milley have the troops shoot at the protesters. He said, just shoot them in the legs. Come on, you can do that. I mean, very Lukashenko-ish, the dictator of Belarus, the Putin puppet. So, and then on top of that, in 2016, when there were really, really big protests happening in Russia around Putin rigging the elections, and Navalny was really hitting his stride, Vladimir Putin took a portion of the Russian equivalent of the National Guard and created a group. Forgive me for not remembering the name. It's in my article today, the Russian name, the Russian word. But it's basically called a Rapid Reaction Force. And there's 600,000 men in this now. And what it does is it basically shows up for elections, and it shows up whenever there are demonstrations. And Trump announced yesterday that he's creating this permanent rapid reaction force within the National Guard all across the United States. So it looks to me, and I think to anybody who looks at this carefully, like Trump is taking advice from Putin. He's following Putin's playbook to a T. The rapid reaction force, he announced that just a couple days after he had a private meeting with Putin in his car. I think he's getting instructions from Putin. I think he has been all along.
So if Donald Trump were to use the military and clearly rig the election right in front of us, steal the election, how do you think Americans would actually respond? Do you think there would be huge protest or no?
A lot's going to depend on how the media reacts to it. If he and the Republicans with him make claims that even remotely seem credible, that, oh yeah, look at this. We found some fraud in Atlanta. We found some fraud in San Francisco. We found some fraud in Chicago. We're going to grab these voting machines, or we're going to grab the ballots, and we're going to go through and carefully, in other words, if they do it in a way that all seems kind of reasonable, I think there's a reasonably good chance he'll get away with it. I mean, by the way, this is not the first time this has happened in America. This was routine stuff in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s in the Confederate States. They just, routinely stuffed ballots and refused to count ballots in particular areas and those kinds of things. So it's not like America has not experienced this before. It's just that to purge ourselves of it the last time, we had to go through a bloody civil war that lost us 700,000 Americans.
So how do we prepare for this?
I think number one is to wake people up so that they know that this is coming. And that's why I wrote the op-ed that I did today at harvardreport.com. And I know why you did. A couple of days ago, you wrote a piece that was very similar in import, in point. And I think the more often, the more of us can talk about this. Tomorrow I'm going to be talking about in my op-ed about how the Republicans are really only in it for the money. They're just in it for themselves and for their rich friends. They don't care about governing. They don't care about the people. They don't care about the average person. They don't care about Christianity. They don't care about any of this BS that they're constantly talking about. They just want to do it for rich people. And that requires holding on to power. And that creates this symbiotic relationship between the rich people and them. And now that you've got most of our media owned by rich right-wing oligarchs, back to your question, how is this going to play out? It's going to be a real challenge if Fox News and 1,500 right-wing radio stations come down on Trump's side when he tries to rig the elections. And wouldn't surprise me if there are some small examples of this happening this November. Maybe in Virginia.
We have to, right. We have to look at this election very, very carefully in New Jersey and Virginia, because the House of Delegates is up in Virginia. Right. And, if the governor's
Virginia is the only state where this November is going to be a big deal.
Yeah. Well, New Jersey, I mean, Republicans keep floating these articles that Mikey Sherrill's beatable and all this stuff. I'm like, I don't think so. But we're going to find out how it goes. I mean, we're going to find out a lot. What I think the media doesn't cover much are like the special election victory yesterday in Iowa, where a Democrat flipped a Republican seat for the state Senate and they broke the supermajority. That's the second this year since Trump got in that in Iowa we flipped a Senate seat that Trump had won handily. And that gets almost no press. The corporate media I used to say the corporate media is not our friend. It's not our enemy. It's now our enemy. I really believe it's money making, but it's our enemy. If you see it, their goal is to further Donald Trump, help Donald Trump. Look, they don't even talk about Epstein at all. Doesn't even matter. Whatever Trump says, he's back to setting the agenda. For about a couple of weeks, we had this little shining moment of, the media was actually covering a story, which was Epstein, and Trump didn't like it. That's done. They've moved on now, and they're back to setting the agenda.
September 3rd, Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna are going to be bringing some Epstein victims to Washington, D.C. It'll be interesting to see if any of them have the Katie Johnson kind of stories, about Trump raped me. She seems to have vanished and withdrew her complaints. I mean, she had actually filed lawsuits against Trump, and then she started getting all these death threats and just backed away. And of course, Virginia Giuffre committed suicide in the face of the hate that she was getting from the Trump people. So we'll see, but I think it might bring it back. I don't think this. I think we're in Act 2 of a 3-act play here.
Interesting. In your heart, what do you think it might show at the end of the day? There's no wrong answers.
I think that if we actually were able to see, not that we should necessarily, but somebody should, these hundreds, perhaps thousands of hours of videotape that Jeffrey Epstein apparently made, I'd be willing to bet that there will be videotape of Trump having sex with underage girls in there.
Really? Interesting.
I mean, don't you think so?
I think it's possible.
Why else would they go through all this to cover it up? I mean, if Alan Dershowitz just came out and said, yeah, I flew on his plane. I went to his pedo island and I got a massage, but I kept my underwear on and it was a 50-year-old Russian woman named Olga. And, people were like, Okay. I mean, Trump could have said the same thing, right? He could have said, "Yeah, I knew the
No,
guy, yeah, but no, he's not. He's doing his
Trump, to be honest,
complete denial thing.
he lied last year in writing. He put, I was never on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. In
Yeah,
reality, the records released by DOJ in earlier this year and in the trial of Maxwell showed he was on the flight at least 8 times. You can read the
right.
flight logs. You can see who he's on. He's on with Maxwell and he's on with Epstein. Sometimes he's on with Don Ju or Eric was on and he was on with a nanny and Tiffany once and that kind of stuff. But other times it's just him, Maxwell, Epstein, and one other person unidentified, 5 other people unidentified. And you're like, who are these people? Why
Yeah,
doesn't the corporate media ask those questions? It's right there in the flight log. It's public record, folks. I'm not a detective. I just read a lot. I'm like,
right.
this is curious. And I talked about it Monday on the show. I'm like, why doesn't anyone in the corporate media ask questions about like, and he'll say, I don't remember. It's the 1990s. And maybe it's fair to say I don't remember. But maybe someone does. Maybe someone would come forward and say, I was on the flight
Yeah.
and Trump did this or that. I think, but he lied about being on the plane, got caught in that lie. And to me, as someone who was an attorney, just applying common sense, he's a lot. It's not, it's false in one, false in all. Like he's a liar. We know
Yeah.
that about Donald Trump. So,
Well, and Virginia and Ghislaine Maxwell, I mean, what was she convicted of? She was convicted of perjury. She was convicted of lying to the FBI and lying to a grand jury about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. And we're supposed to believe her when she says, "Oh, Trump was always a gentleman." Really? Seriously?
and again, another example of corporate media sucking is, and I played the clip on Monday. She said Donald Trump was never inappropriate. I never saw him being inappropriate. She said the exact same thing about Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Like, so you don't think corporate media will go like, she is lying now under oath. She said Jeffrey Epstein never did anything inappropriate. Or is her definition of inappropriate sex with children is not inappropriate? Is that what she's telling us? Is that a coded message? So Trump had sex with children. Is she telling us that? I don't think she's doing a coded message. I think that she repeats the same thing. She literally said Epstein did nothing inappropriate. I never heard anyone complain about him doing anything inappropriate. And meanwhile, she was involved in him raping children. She was personally involved. She was convicted for that.
Yeah, and
So
that's established.
non liar.
And then number three, was she under oath when she was talking to Todd Blanche? I don't think so. And then number four, if you read the transcript, you'll see that in many of these exculpatory statements that she made, Todd Blanche fed her the language before she repeated it.
Yeah, that was
Well,
complete.
leading the witness, isn't it, attorney?
It is. In a deposition, you get away with it. I didn't listen to the beginning of the deposition, if she was sworn in or not. I should look at the transcript on the because if it's a deposition, you usually would say you're under oath here. It's like you're in court. Anything you say, you have to tell the truth. It could be used against you in a case, that kind of stuff. There's a general swearing in of a witness. I just didn't look to see. I just read the transcript and assumed it was under oath. But they're never going to prosecute her. They gave her a nicer prison. They
Yeah,
rewarded her for lying. So
yeah.
that's the reality. So I'm chatting with our friend Thom Hartmann. So Tom, with the Democrats and redistricting, now it's reality in Texas. It's going to happen. Now you've got, I mean, the Republicans there, but Democrats, Gavin Newsom is very clear. And I have the AG of California on tomorrow, Rob Bonta. We're going to talk more about redistricting and what's going to happen logistically that way. What more do you want to see more from Democrats? Do you want in every state they have the ability to do something to do it?
I don't think they have a choice. I mean, we're hearing now that Trump is leaning on Ohio, Indiana. They've got a bunch of states. I had David Dyer, I think his name, or Dreyer, on my program a couple of days ago. He's like one of the leading experts on this stuff. And the kind of sad news that he shared with me was that it requires a trifecta. You've got to have a single party in control of the House, the Senate, and the governor's office in order to pull off gerrymandering typically. And the Democrats have 12 or 13 of those, and the Republicans have like 22 or 23 or 24 of them. So there are a lot more potential seats that can be acquired by Republicans through aggressive gerrymandering than by Democrats. And you've got Republican governors who are far more likely to bow to the demands of Donald Trump than you have Democratic governors who are willing to go along with some nebulous conspiracy with no leadership in the Democratic Party. So my concern is that if this turns into a national redistricting war, or gerrymandering war, and it certainly looks like it already is, that we're going to lose.
It's it's remarkable to think about what's happening and how this is playing out. I'm not sure. Look, in New York, we have 7 Republican seats. Why they have a trifecta more Republican states? Some of those states have 1 congressional seat. So if there's any solace in there, you've got places like Wyoming and the Dakotas and stuff like that. We're in New York. We have a trifecta. There's 7 Republican seats. There's 9 Republican seats, I think, in California. Maryland's got 1. We can get that. New Jersey has 3. There's a trifecta there. You can take some of that. Look, the way they're doing it in Texas, you literally can just draw straight lines connecting it like a connect the dot thing and go, there's the district, and you can eliminate all Republican districts if you want. It's
There is a little bit of good
you
news in the Texas stuff. And this may apply to other states as well, because what they did in Texas was they basically took a bunch of Republican plus 12, plus 15, plus 18 districts, where Republicans just literally never lose, and diluted them, or diluted Democratic districts with those districts. In other words, merged parts of them together to knock out the Democrats. But what that did was it shifted the multiple Republican districts from being plus 12 or plus 15 down to being plus 5 or plus 6. And look at what just happened yesterday in Iowa. You had a 21-point swing from the last election. And so it's entirely possible. I'm not sure it's probable, because we haven't gotten to the race, and the Republicans will always have a massive financial advantage. But I think it's entirely possible that the Republicans might have screwed themselves in Texas. They might end up with a whole lot more swing districts than they expected.
I hope we had the Democratic state chair from Texas on, and we talked about they're mapping these based on the 2024 return, which was really an outlier in terms of Republicans winning bigger on the state level with Donald Trump. It had been contracting. And he made a point that if you go the same map and you're in 2022, many districts become competitive. In 2018, if it was that kind of turnout, Democrats would actually win some of those 5 seats. And 2018 was Trump's first midterm. So you wonder if the enthusiasm and the energy is going to be on our side. Instead of them taking 5, we pick up even 1 means something. We pick up 2. Wow, they did all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, but this is not in the big picture of our soul as a democratic republic. This isn't good. And the GOP is doing this. They don't care. They don't care where we go with this. Look, I say in the show all the time that we are at war. And I want people to understand that. I mean, their idea now is really, this is their big push. This is their Gettysburg. They're coming up from the South and they want to win this thing. And they want one party rule for the rest of our lives, at least, not for longer than that. And they want a national party like the Fidesz party in Hungary, where it's long-term one-party rule. And you can have local elections and win our local things. So this is the most important election. 2026 is Gettysburg for me.
I agree. And the declaration of war was the Powell memo in 1971. And the assertion, the first big victory was the Reagan presidency in 1980, when he cut a deal with the Ayatollahs to hang on to the hostages to screw Jimmy Carter. He committed treason. And then, a bunch of oil billionaires in the oil industry, following the 1978 Supreme Court decision, the Bellotti decision that was authored by Lewis Powell, legalized big money contributions, both from billionaires and from corporations. So, and it's just been downhill ever since. But that was, the beginning of that war was Reagan going after unions. He was, destroy the infrastructure of the Democratic Party, destroy the most effective fundraising machine within the Democratic Party, destroy the organizing ability within, for Democrats. And that was the union movement in the United States. So we've gone from a third of us being, union members and having decent union jobs in 1981 when Reagan came into office to what, 6% now in the private sector. And they're gutting it in the public sector. He just got a ruling from the Supreme Court that they can kick a couple 100,000 public employees off the union rolls. So, it is a war. You're absolutely right.
The multifaceted war that's been fighting for years.
And people are dying in this war, by the way. 2 children died today in Minnesota in this war.
And we talked about that briefly on your show, and I think you asked me about, do you think Democrats talk about changing things, and how do you think Republicans will respond? And I told you, because we didn't know the identity of the shooter, they will just try to find the identity of the shooter and blame that, whatever it might be,
Right.
if it's from a group they don't like, and as opposed to talking about guns and access to guns and ensuring people who should not have a gun are being.
Right. Now they're all confused because it's a trans Nazi.
I know it's very odd. Like I wasn't sure what the
It's
agenda
like,
for. I'm like,
what?
oh, that seems real. And then the person, right? The person, anti-Jewish, anti-Muslim stuff, um, didn't seem to like Trump either. So it looked like a really someone deeply troubled who
Yeah.
with all those writings were just so. And how does that person get a gun? I don't know yet. I mean, we've been on air. People may have determined how this person who was 23 got 3 guns in Minnesota and be able to use it in this horrific shooting. These children are in mass,
Yeah.
praying, and this beginning of the school year, and to be killed is just there's no
Yeah.
words.
The
And
survivors are going to be scrambled for the rest of their lives. I mean, this kind of trauma does not leave you when you're that young.
the Governor Newsom wrote today, we cannot even make it through the first week of school without mass shootings, and the GOP will continue to do absolutely nothing while our kids are being gunned down. This is sick. I kind of like that Democrats have stopped waiting and the idea, let's not politicize a tragedy. Look,
Yeah.
the only time people talk about gun violence is right around the shootings.
Yeah.
So that's the time you have people's attention to make your points. And our goal is to save lives, not to make more money for gun manufacturers or the NRA.
And the gun problem is a political problem. It's the consequence of political decisions that were made that were driven by Republicans, both on the Supreme Court and in state and federal legislatures. It is purely political. If we didn't have the kind of corrupt politics that we have in the United States right here, right now, we would not have this gun problem, and those children probably wouldn't be dead right now. And so to say that you're politicizing it inappropriately, that's BS. I mean, Democrats absolutely must politicize this because it's only through the political process we're going to solve this damn problem.
Very much so. And nothing will happen. I hope in 2028 they make this an issue, but Democrats tend to back off the issue because it, the chance of changing things, I think, for many have made it the idea that you invest in it too much. But look, I wish they would. I just don't know what the issues are going to be in 2028. Now we're starting to see things take shape a little for 2026. Yesterday in Iowa, before you came on the top of the show, I went through the candidate in Iowa who won. She talked about affordability. In Iowa, in a red district, she's talking about the same thing as Zoran Mandami is talking
Yep.
about here in New York City, the most
Yep.
liberal city. Same idea, affordability, and it resonated, and that's what she won.
And
Is
this is what Bernie's been
the
saying
Democrats?
forever.
Yeah, well, Bernie forever. Bernie, that's his thing. And Trump lied about it. But the idea of fighting for the working class, fighting for affordability, say, I'm going to make your family's life better. And we're going to stop seeing you get ripped off by these big companies who are just doing it and giving donations to politicians. Even some Democrats, to be honest, they're giving them money.
Yeah, sadly, we've got the so-called problem
Well, what do you
solvers.
think? Do you think affordability is this part of the path to victory in 2026?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. It's going to make Zoran probably your next mayor there in New York City, and which is going to be real interesting because he's a fighter, and when Trump tries to take him on, that's going to be entertaining. But yeah, I would argue that had Bernie Sanders run in 2016, had the Clinton machine not taken him down, or for that matter, 2012, and certainly 2020, that Bernie would have won because America wanted that kind of change. And what is so sad to me, Dean, and perpetually infuriating is how Democrats and Democratic leaning commentators, particularly on places like MSNBC and CNN, refer to Bernie Sanders as a super leftist or some kind of ultra leftist or a far leftist or whatever. And he is not saying anything that Harry Truman wasn't saying. Harry Truman introduced legislation for single payer legislation, for God's sake. Franklin Roosevelt wanted single payer legislation. Lyndon Johnson, John Kennedy, they all want it. What are they? These people all radical leftists? I mean, socialists or something? I mean, for God's sake, let's start telling the truth about what's going on. Bernie Sanders is right smack dab in the middle. If you look at on issue after issue after issue, I mean, name one issue where Bernie's position polls less than 80% with Democrats and less than 60% with the general public. There isn't one, to the best of my knowledge.
That's an excellent point. And it's so funny. Right before you came on, I was talking about how, we're labeled as radicals because we think there should be health care for all or expanding Medicare to cover vision and dental and hearing and the idea of paid family leave. These things all poll 60, 70, 75% support. These are not radical. This is corporate media telling people it's radical. It's the
And
wealthy saying it's radical. It's not radical. It's mainstream. That's America. That would bring people on the left and the right together in enough coalition to win elections. But
And you know what they call people, politicians in Canada, in Norway, in England, in France, in Germany, who advocate for free college for everybody and a free national healthcare system? They call them conservatives.
I knew you were going to say that. That's it. Talking with Thom Hartmann. So last thing, Tom, let's talk about the economy for a second here. I keep thinking we're on borrowed time. I don't, and I say it
Me
because at
too.
some point you're gonna have to pay the ferryman. Is that the right term? Is that the right
Yeah.
analogy? Like
Yeah.
you
On the ferry,
keep
on the
raising
sticks.
tariffs
Yeah.
to
The sticks.
50% in tariff. So what is it, Tom?
That goes back to the old stories of the river Styx,
Right, right. You go over the river and you pay the right. So I'm saying so the today the tariff went into effect on India, 50% by Donald Trump. Other tariffs are 20, 25, 30%. Some of the countries, some of the companies said we could absorb the tariff in the beginning, but now that it's going to be permanent, they can't. We're going to start seeing prices go up. Yesterday, the Consumer Confidence Report came up and it ticked down again. We've got job growth is slowing to the point where Trump fires the person in charge of reporting job growth because it doesn't look good for him. But we all feel what's going on. I have concerns that I'm not sure how long this lasts. This kind of, it's like the 1929 before the crash. Like there's something going on here that I'm deeply concerned about. And maybe I'm wrong, but I have I have a suspicion that the bottom's going to fall out in the economy in the near future.
I think you're right. I really do. And I think, within, my guess would be within a year and a half. Probably not in the next few months, but we'll see. But even if the bottom doesn't fall out, I think politically it's going to be a disaster for the GOP. As inflation ticks back up and unemployment goes back up, we're looking at stagflation. I mean, it's just that simple. And Paul Krugman has been calling this on his Substack newsletter for a couple of weeks now, and I think he's doing a really good job. And I can't disagree with anything he's saying, generally speaking. Um, so yeah, how it's going to play out. I mean, in 1929, there were not, we didn't have the financial stabilizers that we have now. But
Right.
on the other hand, in 2008, after we got rid of Glass-Steagall in 1999, stupidly, this was, Phil Graham's big project, the Republican from Texas. Um, it allowed the banksters to start making a small fortune. My guess, Dean, is that the two sectors of the economy that could produce this crash, I mean, a real serious crash, a 2008 style crash, a 1929 style crash, are number one, housing, and number two, Bitcoin. And we'll see. And it could be a combination of the two. So.
And you say housing and that values are inflated now and they would start coming down and then
Well, housing is I heard a statistic the other day that I found hard to believe because I haven't seen it in the value of my own house, but it was that in the last 6 or 7 years, housing costs have almost doubled in much of the United States. I mean, if that is true, then we've got a genuine housing crisis going on, and it certainly looks, from homelessness and other statistics that's the case. So you've got that. You've got, these high interest rates, so people are hanging on to their houses rather than selling them and having to remortgage. Even if it's not that they don't want to move. I mean, there's a lot of pent-up demand building up right now. And I think even if the Fed does lower interest rates next month, as everybody's anticipating, it's only going to be a quarter point. It's going to be really, really small. It's not going to have the kind of impact that Trump wants. He wants a super hot economy. And going into the 2028 elections and the 2026 and 2028 elections. And the problem, of course, as anybody who pays attention to the Fed and macroeconomics can tell you, is that will cause inflation. It will drive up inflation.
of course.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care. And he keeps thinking that if you cut the interest rates, that it's going to bring down the mortgage rates, but they're really not tied to the interest rate. They're tied to the 10-year treasury. And that has to do with investors having confidence in our system. I don't know why anyone would look at Trump and have confidence in the American economic system, to be honest. That's why I think there's a bubble. I think that other people are still investing in this country that at some point might be like, that really is becoming like a dictatorship. And I don't trust it because what if today he likes the company I'm investing in and tomorrow doesn't like the CEO? and then my value of what I've invested just gets decimated, not because of fundamentals of a company, but because the leader is so whimsical and dictatorial, mercurial, that he's like, I like Cracker Barrel today. I don't like Cracker Barrel tomorrow.
Yeah.
I like it today. I like Taylor Swift today. I don't like Taylor Swift yesterday. Like that on everything. And it affects prices. So we'll see, Tom. I'm concerned. Yeah. And you're right. Because of the FDIC and other things that are safety measures, I don't mean a Great Depression. What we could have, though, again, is a Great Recession. I'm not hoping that, but I can't agree with you more on Bitcoin. That has a cautionary tale written all over it.
Yeah.
Like in a few years, they're going to look back like, how do you not see that? It was a currency made up. It's not based on anything, and you're putting your money in it. And at
Yeah.
least the United States government has the full faith and credit of the United States behind it, right? This is literally, I remember my friends years ago told me, I'm like, what is this? It's on a computer and it turned to a Bitcoin. I'm like, why would I
It's
put money in that? And now
it's
you're like, yeah, it's great.
It's like Dutch tulip bulbs. The other thing that concerns me, remember the old BRICS thing, the BRICS hysteria back from 20 years ago, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. The theory or the idea that these countries were going to get together and create a currency that would replace the US dollar as the world's medium of exchange. Well, with this 50% tariff on India right now, Modi has been moving authoritarian really aggressively over the last 2 years, 3 years anyway, and using racism, principally anti-Muslim racism, as one of his main tools, the same way Trump does with anti-Hispanic racism in the United States. But he's now pushing Modi into the arms of China. And Modi's going to this meeting with the Chinese in a couple of days. And China, of course, is tightening their relationship with Russia. Xi and Putin have been getting together far more regularly. So either Donald Trump tries to bring us into the new axis and completely realigns the United States away from Western Europe and away from all the democratic countries in the world
Right.
and toward the autocratic countries, or we stand weakly with the democratic countries of the world and the autocratic countries get together, and this would probably include Saudi Arabia and Bahrain or the UAE and Qatar, just simply because of their wealth. And they get together and they say, okay, here's the new currency. And we are seriously going to do this. We're going to get around the sanctions. We're going to get around the oil sanctions. This will be, and it's going to be denominated based on something, gold, oil, national wealth, whatever. There are some grumblings or mumblings or whatever the right phrase is, about back channel deals of exactly this type going on, or conversations going on between China, Russia, India, Iran, and,
Wow.
right now. And how this plays out, I don't know, but that's the sort of thing that could bring the U.S. to its knees in a matter of weeks if it was successful,
It's, well,
because it's a
you
huge
know what?
subsidy. Having the dollar be the world's reserve currency is a massive subsidy to the United States.
And the meeting that's going August 31st, September 1st is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. It's 20 world leaders. Putin's there. Xi, of course, from China. He's the host of it. Modi is there. It's Modi's first trip to China in 7 years. And Trump, I think he's used to having completely unequal people to negotiate with in the private sector and as president. But when you've got Modi with a huge country, they don't have the economy of the United States, but they're still a big economy. He could make a deal with Putin. I think Modi's horrible, but I'm saying economically, you still want to have relations with them.
Yeah.
You're right. They could be forming their own little summit co-op here that's beyond just meeting, having their own currency. I hope we don't get there. We'll see.
September 3rd or 4th are going to be huge days. You've got the Epstein victims being rolled out by Massey and Ro Khanna, and then you've got the wrapping up of that conference, and both of those things could be just political earthquakes here in the United States.
Oh boy. All right, Tom. Well, thank you, my friend, so much. Read Tom's Substack. Subscribe to my Substack because I'm needy, but subscribe to Tom's.
It's a
Really
great
good
one.
quality.
Indeed.
HartmanReport.com. Check it out, or just go to Substack.com and see. Everyone's on it. Michael Angelo's got a Substack. I got a Substack. I think John Fugelsang's got one now. He's got his new book
Yeah.
coming out. We're going to have him on the show Friday to talk about his book. A lot of stuff going on. Thank you, Tom, for spending some time here after doing your own show. I really appreciate it. It's great chatting with you. Talk to you in a few weeks.